Good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, March 30th, 2023, and the time is 6:02 p.m. We're here for a special call session of the Coppell City Council. We do have a quorum present, so I'm calling the meeting to order. Item number 2 on our agenda is our citizens' appearance. Persons wishing to speak on any matter other than an item scheduled on the agenda must sign a register, which was located by the door, and list your residence address. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 2 minutes. An individual speaker time may be extended for an additional 2 minutes by a vote of the City Council of the members present. Persons signed up to speak shall be called in the order they signed up. No personal attacks may be made against any council member, the mayor, individual, group, or corporation. There will be no comments from the City Council due to the Texas Open Meetings Record Act. We will be timing you, and you have 2 minutes to speak. If you go over that, we can extend it for an additional 2 minutes. We do have one speaker that signed up to speak tonight, and that's Chris Collins. Mr. Collins.
So my name is Chris Collins, for those of you that don't know me. I'm a resident of Coppell for the last 18 to 20 years. Can't figure it out exactly. I live in Old Town at 564 South Coppell Road, where I operate a Keller Williams franchise and help people buy and sell houses. But tonight I'm here as a resident of Old Town who has watched some changes in Coppell over the last 15 to 20 years. And I'm excited that we're all going to get together as a community and share our vision and our goals for what Old Town Coppell is going to look like. So I can remember when the farmers market was a gravel parking lot. I can remember what it was like before the houses were built there. And so to see it today and see the progression that's happened has been incredible. To see the changes that worked and didn't work, and the idea that we can get together, come together as a community and decide what we want that to look like in the Old Town area. So I'm excited to be here and see where we go with this. Thank you.
Just to be clear on the rules, this is a open citizens appearance is not on an agenda item, and we will be having an open town hall where we will be allowed to speak on Old Town. So we do have 2 other persons that have signed up to speak. And if you guys are wanting to speak on Old Town, we will have a position or a place later to speak on that. Mr. Berger. Okay, we'll be having a whole town hall on that in just a little bit. And the last person signed up to speak was Mr. Sharon. And I told you wrong, sir. I'm sorry about that. So, all right. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. So item number 3, and the reason that we're here tonight is to discuss the Old Town community and have a conversation with public input. Old Town has been around for a long time. The word is that, the historic district actually goes back to when Sam Houston may have slept under a tree here. So it's been around probably longer than any of us. We're specifically going to be talking about Old Town, which is our commercial development in the area. To facilitate the conversations tonight, I'd like to introduce Randy Pennington, and he's going to take us through the rest of the agenda for tonight. Randy?
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Hi. How are you? My name's Randy Pennington. I'll tell you a little bit about me for those of you, some of you know me. Candy and I go way back to when she was mayor. I do this kind of work for a living. I am a consultant. I live over in the Carrollton area right now. I've been around this for a long, long time. Some of you that were involved in the 2030 vision here probably saw me then. I was part of that process. I've been doing this work for a long time. All this gray hair is real, unlike Cliff, who's trying to painting his in to look older. I'm actually the age that I am. Cliff's only about 28. So, But my job tonight is to really sort of keep us between the ditches, if you will, and encourage conversation. Now, some of that conversation will be done at your tables. Some of it will have chance for you to provide feedback directly to council. A couple of ground rules that I have to set to start with. First off, council, this is for you. This is going to be very difficult for a few of you. Be quiet. Your job is to listen tonight, to gather feedback, to listen to what's going on. Certainly we want you to ask questions and be engaged and what have you, but the job here is to listen tonight what all of your wonderful citizens are bringing to the table, rather than you trying to convince them of your vision one way or the other. Does that make sense? So council, pinky swear time, right? We'll pinky swear. And the rest of you, if somebody goes off, just give me a wave and we'll try that. They're going to be fine. The second thing is we're not allowed to vote on anything tonight. There is nothing on the agenda that requires a vote or allows a vote. So please just realize that the purpose of tonight is to provide input on what the vision for Old Town is. And along that way, we'll talk about what's worked and about what's not. Also, there's one other thing that we can't and shouldn't talk about, and that's anything that might be on an upcoming agenda that the council is going to deal with. We can't talk about that agenda item specifically. As it relates to Old Town, yes, but we can't get into specific agenda items because it creates some potential to talk about things that our lawyers don't want us to talk about. That's an easy way of saying that, right? There are some challenges with open meetings and that kind of thing around that and posted agenda items, so we have to make sure that we follow that to make sure. Fair enough for everybody? So I'm going to be sort of keeping us moving forward. I'll come back and talk about ground rules for our time together in a few moments. But right now, the next piece up is a presentation by staff to kind of give us the history of Old Town, how we got here, what it started off. I had a chance to preview this a little while ago. When you see what it was in 1996 versus what it is today, it's pretty amazing. So I think you'll enjoy this as a way to create a frame of reference. Take it away.
Good evening. Today we wanted to give you an update of Old Town. We wanted to show how through purposeful planning, our predecessors created a vision for the district, how the vision has changed over the years, and how the plan is still evolving. We wanted to discuss how the activity and energy of the area is unique by design. We'll discuss the Carter Crowley property, also known as Old Town Main Street, which is 17 acres south of Bethel, west of South Coppell Road. We'll go through the significant investment in Old Town by the city and our partners and discuss the ripple effect in the area. We'll discuss the plan moving forward. Then I believe we're going to break out into smaller groups at each of the tables here. So in May 1996, a comprehensive master plan for the city was adopted. This designated approximately 68 acres for the historic area. The focus of the plan was to preserve the flavor of Coppell as it once was, called for Bethel and Coppell roads to remain as two-lane roadways with buildings oriented close to the road. It also called for structures to be exempt from the masonry requirements, called for streetscaping design, and encouraged pedestrian activity. In July 1997, the zoning ordinance was amended to include a historic district overlay, which allowed for asphalt paving and wood siding with a special use permit. And this would encourage development in the area that did not resemble the typical suburban development. This area was 63 acres in size and was different than the original master plan. In 2002, after significant public input, the old Coppell master plan was accepted by City Council. The boundaries of the district changed to include frontage on the south portion of South Coppell Road, and it also included Grapevine Springs Park. It designated areas for residential purposes, called for the areas with direct frontage on Coppell Road and Bethel Road to have a business component on the first floor. Those areas off Coppell Road would have a mixed use with office concentration, and those off of Bethel would be mixed use with a retail service concentration on the first floor. Also called for institutional uses and parks and open space. This plan was very purposeful in its design. It encourages infill development and the reuse of existing character-defining buildings. It specifically states that it does not prohibit their demolition, but it does encourage their preservation where possible. In May 2003, Council amended the land use component of the 1996 comprehensive plan to reflect what was shown in the old Coppell master plan, making the plan a good reference tool. Then in May 2005, the historic overlay district containing various base zonings was changed to a straight H district, and the design guidelines were adopted, which included standards taken from the old Coppell master plan. This was a 110-acre zoning change and zoning ordinance text amendment that set up design standards and specific regulations for the districts. Components of the design guidelines and regulations included land uses, setbacks, including streetscaping, special parking provisions, no parking lots in front of buildings. It set up on-street and shared parking requirements. And then it has standards for construction, such as roof form, orientation to the street, and close proximity to the street. And these regulations even go into details such as windows, doors, and shutters. The regulations are still in use today. In September 2005, the historic district boundaries were expanded to include 3.2 acres along the south side of Bethel Road to Freeport, to include the Heart 8 barbecue site. We actively went to Stephenville and recruited them to come to Coppell. In January 2007, the historic district zoning and comprehensive plan boundaries for the historic area were again expanded to include 17 acres of a parcel of land that was owned by the city. This was previously used as soccer practice fields, a temporary use until the land was to be sold. In March 2011, the 2030 Comprehensive Master Plan was approved for the entire city. This incorporated the old Coppell Master Plan with the new boundaries. The 135 acres included the Old Town Main Street development site, which the zoning was approved in April of 2011 for the conceptual plan development. Currently, we're operating under the 2030 Comprehensive Master Plan that references the old Coppell Master Plan. We look at this to give us guidance on land uses and how development should occur. So we refer to the zoning ordinance for the regulations. As mentioned, the regulations were formulated using the master plan as a guide. In any new proposal, we first look at the land use to make sure it's compatible with the master plan. Then we look at the zoning ordinance to make sure it meets setbacks and construction standards. We're looking to create a walkable area where the pedestrian is the focus. We have requirements that buildings be close to the road with special attention given towards streetscaping. The parking lots are either shared or located in the rear where possible. We encourage the use of on-street parking where possible. This serves as a traffic calming device along with narrow roads. The master plan called for Bethel and Coppell Road to remain no larger than 2 lanes. This was done intentionally to create an area that was pedestrian friendly. The streetscaping element is very important throughout the district. This includes standard standard light poles and fixtures used consistently throughout the district, as well as trash can, benches, tree wells, and landscape islands with consistent landscaping. The plan encourages infill development with character-defining elements of the district. Buildings that have front yard porches, parapets, and gable ends fronting the road. We wanted to provide a couple of examples how specific plans changed in the area. The old Coppell Master Plan gives suggestions for some adaptive reuses. With the construction of the new Senior and Community Center, the plan shows how a restaurant could fit in the former senior center space. The city went through a competitive bidding process. We couldn't attract any restaurants for this location, which forced the plan to change. We settled on an office space. Through a facade improvement grant approved by the city, we paid for the conversion of the facade to resemble an old firehouse as the senior center once was. We also formalized the on-street parking in front of the structures with Bethel Coppell Road improvements. Another example of how plans changed relates to another city-owned property. This was on the east side of South Coppell Road and was 10.5 acres. In 2007, council approved a plan development for the Villages of Old Coppell. This consisted of a 25,000 square foot event center with two 21,000 square foot, two-story retail buildings, which each had a boutique hotel on the second floor. This was never built due to market conditions. In 2013, 64 patio homes were approved for 8.7 acres of the 10.5 acres to match those built on the west side of the road. The Life Safety Park was approved in 2015 for the remaining acreage on the south end of the district. As mentioned, in January 2007, the City Council at the time approved the historic district zoning and comprehensive plan to be expanded to include the Carter Crowley property. This was 17 acres owned by the city, which served as practice soccer fields. The thought previously was that it would be sold for office warehouse uses. It was decided to be included within the H District with the idea that the property would give a permanent home to the farmers market for the community. The portion that abutted Bethel Road was home to the temporary farmers market. And here's a picture looking from the soccer fields to the north. The zoning for the Main Street Old Town Conceptual PD was approved in April 2011. Through a partnership with CSE Investments, a concept plan was approved that allowed for a mixed-use area with a town square concept. The city would provide the infrastructure, and our partner would market the property and bring in users to develop the land. Here are some images that the city and our partner used as an inspiration for the area. We wanted traditional building design as recommended in the master plan. We wanted gathering spaces and a water feature. This is the draft of the original concept plan. We were very purposeful in the design. We knew that there wasn't the traffic to support a South Lake Town Center or a Grapevine Main Street. We wanted to create a gathering space for our residents. We were intentional in the design of narrow one-way streets with on-street parking. The sidewalks present a walkable environment. Streetscaping is well thought out with traditional street lights, benches, tree wells, and landscape islands. Trees provide the needed shade for pedestrians during the summer months. We met with the Farmers Market Committee and vetted the design of the pavilion and access. We included the water feature as an interactive play fountain, and we included a playground for children. And this was modeled after some of the character-defining buildings in the area. The uses that were approved have changed slightly over the years. The uses included pavilion/park, office cottages, restaurants, retail, townhome, service, and future uses. And just before the concept plan was approved, the townhouse component changed to patio homes based on a product that Darling Homes was doing in Allen. In 2015, the service type uses on the west side of the plan were changed to 11 patio homes, just because there wasn't the market demand as originally anticipated for the small service type users. The demand for patio homes was higher. In 2017, 12 more patio homes were approved on the south end of the plan. The area was marked as future use originally on the plan. It had frontage on Burns and faced an office warehouse. Through some innovative landscape screening with a slip streets concept, more patio homes became feasible. And finally, in 2018, the Arts Center was approved on the western portion of that future use portion of the site. The city has invested significantly in the area. You can see from the slide, through marketing, new facilities and improvements to existing facilities, infrastructure, trails, amenities, special events, and land acquisition, we've invested roughly $49.5 million into the area. Because of the investment in the Main Street Old Town development, we've seen a ripple effect in the area. We saw Coppell Deli get redeveloped. In June 2013, the Darling patio homes on the east side of South Coppell Road were approved for development. Then in August 2014, Hammond Street patio homes, which contain 18 patio home lots, were approved. December 2014, a detailed plan development for 3 professional offices called Founders Crossing were approved. And these are located on the south side of Bethel, just east of Hardate. In April 2015, Life Safety Park was approved on the east side of South Coppell Road at the south end of the district. In November 2015, Lost Creek Live Work were approved. And in August 2018, the old Coppell Live Work were approved. Projects currently under construction. In July 2021, Council approved a 7,600 square foot, 2-story mixed-use building with retail on the first floor and residential on the second floor, just west of the pavilion. The shell building has been completed. The Kramers have moved in on the second floor for their residence, and they're working on the tenant finish out for the first floor. Then in October 2021, a proposal to allow 5 live-work units was approved for the northeast corner of South Coppell Road and Heath Lane. The infrastructure is complete and the lots are for sale. In September 2022, a DTLPD for a 10,200 square foot, 2-story mixed-use building with retail and residential was approved just south of the other mixed use. This is currently under construction. There's very little vacant land left in the area that is developable. City owns a lot next to Twisted Root that's planned for a restaurant use. City also owns land in front of the senior center with frontage on Bethel Road, and the city owns a sliver of property on the north side of Bethel Road just in front of the water tank. There is a lot on the southeast corner of McNear and Coppell Road that's suitable for live work, that's privately held, and the property at the far north end of the district was previously planned for a joint development between 2 property owners. This now has 3 owners, each with a differing idea for how it's to be developed. So the property would be suitable for live work. In fact, we have a development advisory committee meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from Tuesday, the previous Tuesday. So after all the vacant land is developed, we will get more and more redevelopment questions. The redevelopment of certain properties will involve either demolition or moving buildings, and this is something that needs to be discussed. If more retail or restaurants are wanted in the area, we also need to discuss how to attract more businesses. The majority of people that come in to talk to us are looking for an office. A question that's come up in several discussions is whether or not restaurants need the bar component to succeed. This is currently not allowed in Coppell if the alcohol sales exceed the food sales in a restaurant. So we've paid close attention to the details of plans approved in the area. We require a detailed plan development for all developments. This allows us to make certain exceptions where common sense applies. Some of the development in the area has been private developer driven. Each of the developments in the area have been well thought out, And you can tell that a significant investment has been made into each of the developments. Just so you understand, a planned development is a zoning that can be approved to allow a certain particular development. If a significant change or deviation from the plans that were approved is needed, it will need to be brought back through the zoning process in order to gain approval. This involves the same notification of the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council public hearing process. From this side, you can see a comparison of where we were at in 1996 to today. Roughly 70 acres of land has been developed or redeveloped during that time. And this number does not include the roads that have been either brand new, newly constructed, or Bethel, Coppell, and Burns Road, where they went in and redid those. Just to sum up the presentation, I'll leave you with this. The Coppell community, the city staff, the city council, our partners, and private developers have been intentional about the development within Old Coppell. We've adjusted our plans due to market conditions and the wants of the community. We expect the plan for the area to continue to evolve in the future. I want to thank you for allowing me to share the history of Old Town and how we've evolved to where we are today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Randy.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Nice job. So what we've provided so far is a picture of how we got to where we are. I suspect many of you or all of you will be interested in where do we go from here. And so to understand that, we've asked the retail coach, Mr. Parker, to come in and talk a little bit about what he sees going forward as potential for the land that we have and the future development of the land that we've got. So take it away. Welcome.
Keep going? Got it. Technical difficulties. Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Charles Parker. I'm a project director for the Retail Coach. We are a retail recruitment and development consulting firm. We are technically headquartered out of Tupelo, Mississippi, but more than half our team is located right here in Texas. I'm just up the road, actually, in Frisco. But our company was founded about 23 years ago to help communities understand the retail and restaurant industry. So I use retail pretty interchangeably with retail, restaurants, hospitality, this day and age getting more into entertainment, even hospitality to a little bit of an extent. But over the last 23 years, we've worked with over 650 communities across 40 states, helping communities understand what it is retail and restaurants are looking for, how to attract them, and what all goes into the process to help communities better understand what it takes, if that is a desire of theirs, to attract more retail, more business to their areas. And that's everything from the top tier commercial districts, the Costco's of the world, all the way down to historical districts. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about general retail trends for retail and restaurants, just to get a baseline understanding of what they're looking for. And then really get into what we've been working with Coppell the last few years in general, talking about the general retail trade area, but also the performance, if you will, about the foot traffic, what goes into the visitation to existing Old Town area, and how that maybe compares to maybe other areas across North DFW. Not that we want to be like anyone, but just to get some context and have the discussion of what is Old Town today and what would we like it to go, hopefully to provide some context to help this room have better conversations about the vision for this area. And then lastly, talk about, from our perspective, the SWOT analysis, what we perceive to see where does it position today, what are strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, to talk about, whatever the plan may be to move forward, what would go into that decision-making process. So overall, I know it's a lot of words, so I'll just kind of talk through it briefly to give you a heads up. But when we talk about retail in general and brick and mortar stores, the first thing we get is well, why are we talking about that? Brick and mortar is dead, right? Amazon's taking over. We're not doing those things. I can order a hamburger, everything just about but a haircut and get it delivered to my door, right? But overall, that's not what we're seeing in the market. Data is available like never before, and everything is so data-driven with site selection, and we still need ultimately get those things delivered to our door. We have to have that last mile, whether that be Amazon or a local business. They still have to get those goods to you. So there will always be that brick and mortar presence, no matter where we go for that. And developers and brokers, the ones that are in charge of placing these restaurants, whether it be national or regional or even local to an extent, they are actively looking for locations across the board. And they're not going anywhere because we are an experience and a social creature, right? COVID more than anything proved that when we were cooped up for so long, the first thing we did was wanted to go out and see friends, see people. And we've really seen a renaissance, especially in historical districts, looking at we want to go out and we have to have that experience. We're not going and going to the movies the same way. We're not doing our experience the same way. We're not going on dates the same way. So it's turned into where are these areas we can have that experience? Where's that third place? It's not where we work. It's not where we live, which sometimes at this point, those two are blurring lines with so much work from home. We have to have that third place where we can go and have the entertainment value. And a lot of it is centered around food, but a lot of it is centered around historical districts. And that's why we've seen the reemergence, and we have meetings like this talking about how can we make sure that we preserve and have a direction for our historical districts. In general, and probably maybe a surprise to a lot, but restaurants and retail are really in expansion mode right now. Despite the economy, despite the doom and gloom that we may be hearing, despite any lingering effects with inflation and gas prices over last summer through now, they really are in major expansion mode. They're looking for sites. More than half of restaurants across the country are looking for new sites. It's 60% of restaurants have said that they are looking for expansion mode and want to be in new areas. 75% of them expect costs to increase, so they're having to be very selective in what goes into their new sites. How are we making those decisions is all based on data. Profitability has been cut into as labor, logistics, supply chains all cut into their component to it. So now more than ever, they have to get it right when talking about new locations. And we mentioned attracting new restaurants as potentially part of a strategy here. We have to make sure we're speaking their language, whether that be a local entrepreneur, a local franchisee, or one of the big restaurant chains that you may be familiar with. And they have, like I said, have to be sure. They cannot make mistakes in this day and age with the cost of real estate and the cost and everything of operations being so high. So new locations have to check all of their boxes. Most of these have existing locations, whether that be like the 2 restaurants we have or the 3 or 4 restaurants talking about, with Hard 8 or Twisted Root. They have other locations across this region, right? They can go and look at that, and they know their top performing stores have a certain amount of cars driving by every day. They know the difference in the value of how much 3 extra parking spaces mean. So they know that having 5,000 extra cars by this location translates to having a 25% bump in sales. So they are going through their check mark and they're asking, hey, how many people are in the trade area? How many people are activated to go to that particular site? What are the traffic counts? How big is the property? If it's a little bit too big and we're having to pay for an extra 500 square feet, our numbers aren't going to necessarily work out. We're going to go to a spot where we do have that optimal size. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's just right. And then it's parking, visibility, signage, all the things that go into, can my business be successful? And they are doing all of this on the front end before they even decide where to open a new burger joint, a new boutique retailer, anything in between. So keep this in the back of your mind that everything is data driven, and that's why we get so in depth on some of these pieces. And so I wanted to preface kind of the next step with that when we start talking about specifically in Coppell what Old Town looks like to an extent. And one of the tools that we use at the Retail Coach is mobile location data. And I'm going to preface this by saying this is all opt-in data. This is not Big Brother. This is stuff that is Certainly the pieces that when you download an app, whether that be a game or a sports app, and you're clicking through your phone and you say, yep, I accept these terms, yep, turn on my mobile location data, yep, use it for research. This is the type of research that it's used for. It's all anonymous. It doesn't say exactly where you live. It doesn't know exactly who you are. It doesn't know anything about you. But it allows us to generally map out areas to say, hey, these are where folks are coming from. And one of the things that we talk about, I use the term foot traffic in this. This is not getting out and walking. This is actual mobile location data. This is cell phones. So every time you walk into a Target or every time you go by a gas station, your phone pings location data if you've opted into it and have allowed that to be turned on. And from that, it allows us to look at the behavior of consumers. What time are people getting gas? What day of the week are people going to eat? When's the busiest time at Target? You see this on Google searches a lot where you have the bar graph and it says, hey, go now, it's not very busy. This is all this type of stuff that goes into the mobile location data. And this is what we looked at for Old Town. So you can kind of see that geo-fence up top, kind of goes from the hard 8 in the top left corner back towards Bethel Street, kind of behind the homes that were mentioned in the previous presentation. But we use this as a surrogate for the core of Old Town. And we looked at, hey, who are all the folks that pinged in that geofence over the last 12 months? How many visitors came to that area? And over the last 12 months, there were over 1.5 million visits to that geofence for Old Town. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm going to have a few reference points from some other areas in town. Not that I'm saying that we should be like another area or could be like another area, but just for context. We had 1.5 million visits to Old Town. For reference, downtown McKinney had over 4 million in the last 12 months, just to get perspective on where that falls. But more important than the overall total, when we're talking about the mix of use for areas like this, we look at more specifically how those visits were parceled out. So this top one is hours of the day. So you can see, do I have a, I do. All right, so we have obviously have a high baseline here. It never really goes down to zero because we have a significant amount of residential component in that geofence, right? So those people are never leaving. But we see a peak here at noon for lunch, and then we see a little bit of a secondary peak here for dinner. And when we're talking about entertainment districts or areas that we like to have restaurants and have visitors and shopping, when we look at other markets, we usually see a secondary peak here after work. When we talk about entertainment areas, that's where you usually have the most traffic. People are leaving work for an extended period of time. They don't have anything else to go the rest of the day. They don't have to go back to work. This is generally where we see a highest peak. So that tells me that we don't have a ton of visitors coming in for that area outside of our immediate vicinity. Secondly, this is day of the week, Sunday through Saturday. And we have pretty consistent days of the week that we have about the same amount of traffic with an exception of Sunday. So in essence, that may sound like a positive thing, but from a retailer or a restaurant, that means our Saturday and our Friday are acting a lot like Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We're not pulling in those folks that have a higher visitation rate. Now, for reference, this is another community in the North Dallas area, their historical district, and it has those components that we see. They obviously don't have the same level of residential, but they have a minor peak at lunch, but then 5 o'clock hits, and we have people hanging out, enjoying dinner, shopping, visiting after work, and that's where we see kind of the peak that's very indicative of that entertainment district, that people are coming to visit and hang out to an extent. And then on the same wavelength, we have the day of the week where we have a peak at Friday. Saturday is usually the busiest day as visitors don't have to work. They have their day to themselves. They want to go to an area that attracts them and looks at this. So from just the overall foot traffic that we're seeing, the visitation in, Old Town doesn't seem to be attracting a whole lot outside of our kind of immediate area. But we needed to verify that. We need to take a closer look and look at it a little bit different way. So we looked at a restaurant in Old Town versus a restaurant in downtown McKinney, again, just to provide some perspective. And this restaurant here, you can kind of see the real core is it's really just serving Coppell. It's not pulling in visitors from outside the city limits. You have one little blurb up this direction, but for the most part, it's keeping everything very close to home. Now, in comparison to McKinney, it's pulling from 6 or 7 municipalities away. It's having a significant draw for that restaurant. Now, I know it's a completely different area. We're not necessarily looking to be like a downtown McKinney or one of those areas, but it allows you to look at and see performance of a restaurant so that we can look at it through the eyes of a business, through the eyes of a restaurant. Then if we're trying to attract businesses to be here, this is the type of data that they're looking at for our comparison. Now, I know that looks at one aspect of it, but just from the raw numbers, and this might be a source of frustration for some of the ones talking about attracting businesses, because generally speaking, from within 3 miles or 5 miles, Coppell is very competitive with the other municipalities that have pretty significant downtown or historical districts that some may say is very successful or has a good critical mass of businesses, restaurants, shops, and entertainment. The difference is again, back to that restaurant, is we haven't activated that. We haven't created enough of a destination here if that is something we'd like to achieve for downtown area. So what that boils down to numbers-wise is McKinney's trade area is over 400,000 folks. That's their pie that they can go after, that people are willing to drive and have proven to drive on a regular basis to come visit. Whereas here in Coppell, again, we really just have just around the city limits. We've got about 100,000 people within our pie. So they're just trying to set the table for what today is. We've seen the downtown area or the Old Town area compete, and what level and what tier are we looking at? And then lastly, kind of going through our check marks of site criteria, right? We talked about all the things that retailers and restaurants look at. Kind of the last piece is traffic, so annual average daily traffic. How many vehicles are going through our main corridors coming to Old Town? Because when you're a restaurant or a retailer, that's the lifeblood. Visitation, car traffic is one of the best indications of how many consumers you have access to. And we look at our major corridors around the Old Town area compared with some of the ones across kind of the North Texas area, and it's definitely a much smaller magnitude of those areas. So it shows maybe why our map isn't quite as expanded, or maybe why some of our locations are towards the bottom of foot traffic compared to some of their peers throughout the North Texas and Dallas area. Just another thing just to keep in mind when we kind of put our framework of where we're at today and depending on where we want to go next for our vision. And then just kind of briefly talk through kind of what we see for Old Town today. Obviously, with our potential in the market data, I showed that graph of all those numbers. Coppell in general grades out very well with terms of 3-5 miles. However, we're just not activating that. We're not getting the pull outside of our city limits like these other areas are. That can be by design. You can have a successful strategy that way, but it's just understanding where our pull is coming from. We do have some established brands. We have a Heart 8, we have Twisted Roots, brands that people from other parts of DFW would recognize and come. So if they are looking for a brand that they know, it pops up on their map when they're looking for it in other cities, that it does have that natural draw for visitors to come in. And then we have some built-in traffic generators. We've had a great coffee shop. We've got more of the regional type draws, the Performance Center and the Farmers Market, the Pavilion, two things that if you go to the community development program, those are two things that people would say, hey, if you need traffic generators, these are two options for the community to invest in. And then I got residential on site. And I've also got it over here as a threat, because it is a bit of a double-edged sword. But having that density is one of the biggest components that retailers and restaurants look at. They have to have that built-in consumer base there locally, especially when it's even walkable, so they know that they can go to a business and say, hey, we've got so many houses here. You've got that built-in demand that you can be successful with. Now, some of the weaknesses that we kind of talked about is obviously traffic counts. We don't have the same ones that some of the peer areas in DFW market have. Underperformance in the sense that I know that some of the restaurants in there do not have as high as foot traffic or mobile location reports. They're in the bottom tier of some of their existing locations in Dallas due to traffic counts and overall regionality and their regional draw. Visibility is one thing, and I know we have wayfinding signs, but our downtown is not next to a Highway 5. It's not off, a major thoroughfare like Old Town Keller might be. We are a little bit adjacent off the main thoroughfare, so we don't necessarily have the same visibility on that. And even beyond that, we're not even, our restaurants aren't necessarily even on the main frontage roads that we do have. Heart 8 is, but say Twisted Root, it is, road and a half essentially removed off the even main road. So that does hurt in terms of recruitment. But the opportunity, so this is not all doom and gloom, because this really is a great area and a great foundation. The proximity that is in place. We've got a proximity to over 25 hotels within a very short distance that if we do want to engage visitors and travelers and bring excess dollars, there are some built-in foundations there to capitalize on if that's a strategy that is chosen to go after. Expansion and new development. I know we talked about the limitations on some of those pieces, but there are parcels that are available. Redevelopment is up for another discussion, but there are opportunities to bring in existing or new brands to the area. And there are underserved categories. I mean, we've got a deli, we've got a coffee shop, got a burger joint, got barbecue, but there's a lot of other food options in there that fill out kind of an overall aspect. There's more shopping components to it. You don't just need 1 or 2 boutiques. You can have room for more than that in a successful downtown area. We talk about, competition, but, from our perspective, competition is a good thing. There's a reason Lowe's and Home Depot go right across the street from each other, right? It creates that area for, the critical mass. That are people going to a certain area for dinner, or are they going for a certain restaurant? Because if they're going for dinner, they're going there on a regular basis knowing that if restaurant A is busy, they can always go to restaurant B or restaurant C. You're more likely to attract them and keep them coming back. Whereas if you're a 1 or 2 trick pony and, they're going to go to some area where they have more critical mass, so they're not having to wait in line. So they're going there for dinner. They're not going there for that restaurant. And then kind of the threats, and this is kind of where I'm going to close on, talking about where it fits overall in the historical and downtown and restaurant and retail recruitment in this area. Existing competition, and I'll cover that in just a moment, but the new development trends. This is things that what we're looking at, what are restaurants looking for, what our businesses need from an infrastructure standpoint to a store structure standpoint, all the site criteria. Is that something we can offer them in an area like Old Town? And then lastly, outside perception, good, bad, and different. Do they know about this area? Are we activating them, making sure that if we do want to bring in visitors outside of our Coppell bubble, our community, are we making sure we're presenting that message out there overall to them? But I talked about, again, our locations. And this is something that if we do want to bring in more restaurants, we do want to bring in more retailers, this is a minimum. This is the ante to get into the game, that before we even start competing with other areas that might be, in our peer group, we have to make sure that we're checking the boxes, that there are businesses we do want to recruit, understand they're going to be looking at this. But then lastly, let's close up now, because I know I've been droning on, but the competition and what new development looks like in town, or in this area and retail in general. I talked about at the very beginning that retail development has shifted, and we've tried to copycat the renaissance of historical districts in downtown. Even brand new commercial districts trying to mimic it. This is Hub 21, right up 121 at Almond, McKinney. They've got an amphitheater built in. They've got this all walkability where it's parking exterior, much like the design here was, coming in, and it's walk around and jump between restaurants, drop between shopping. This is the newest trend. It's all about, food trucks and dog parks and walkability and patios and things like that, that if these are things that we want to be part of that trend and have that destination, if that's a choice, these are things that we're seeing pop up across the area. We've got Legacy West up there, and the Shops at Legacy as an option, because this is something that if you're a brand new budding restaurant and you have an option to hop in Legacy West, are you going to choose, the Shops at Legacy? Are you going to choose Roanoke? Are you going to choose Old Town? They have a ton of foot traffic, and if we're trying to attract a boutique or anything, and take Legacy West as a general example of an established area versus one that's kind of budding, and do we want to be a regional or do we want to be a community aspect? And then lastly, just know that this is one of the hottest retail markets in the country right now. With everything coming up with the PGA complex up in Frisco, if you're a new restaurant or you're a trendy restaurant, independent restaurants, these are areas that are trying to get their attention as well. So I know there are certain tiers between what we're doing here and other parts, and that it's not a perfect comparison. But this all needs to be part of the conversation, I think, with the direction of what we want Old Town to be. So I hope that kind of gave some context to that. I know there's going to be more discussion throughout the evening, but thank you for your attention.
I don't know if anyone else caught this. He said we've got a diner, a coffee shop, a burger place, barbecue. What was the other one? The deli. So, I mean, maybe it's where I grew up, but I'm thinking all he needs is Mexican and pizza. He's got the 7 basic food groups right there. Pretty close. So, what we've done so far is look at how we got to where we are, an outside view of what's available and what we can do going forward. You've been now going for 53 minutes. And we're going to put you back into work in just a moment. But if you bring my slides up for just a second. When you come back, I'm going to give you a break. Because when we come back, we're going to start chatting and talking. There should be seats for everyone at the table. When we come back, you're going to be at your tables. And it'll be a combination of questions that we're interested in your feedback in. We'll spend some time on that, probably around half an hour. And then we'll come back, hear the report out, and then give individuals that want to say something an opportunity to say something after that. Is that fair? I am conscious that we want to give everybody that had something to say. But we also want the group input along the way. So, just sort of ground rules as we go forward. The purpose is to remind ourselves is this: to provide input to the council on what Old Town should be in the future. You've seen what it is, how we got here. You've seen a little bit about what it could be. The main purpose is to provide that. When it comes to ground rules, I'm reminded of this quote from a guy named Roger Von Eck. He said, "Truth is all around us. What matters is where we put our focus." At this point in time, this development, this area, could go a number of different directions. And what matters is where we put our focus. So as you're thinking and talking through that, anyone here a Ted Lasso fan? You watch Ted Lasso? I knew you'd be watching Ted Lasso. If you're not watching Ted Lasso and you want a really feel-good story, go watch it. But my very favorite scene in Ted Lasso occurs at the end of the season when everyone is in a pub and they're playing darts. And Rupert, who is the ex-husband of our heroine, is there, and he's been a pain all season long. And he's complaining to his ex-wife who owns this soccer club. Ted Lasso is a D3 or D2 American football coach who's recruited to go coach soccer in the UK. And they're there, and Ted takes a dart with his right hand and flicks it up. And Rupert says, "Oh, into darts?" And Ted says, "Well, I play a little bit." And Rupert says, "Care for a game?" Ted says, "Sure." And he says, "Care to wager on it?" And he says, "Sure." And he throws out this ridiculous amount of money. And then he says, "I'll tell you what." Ted says to Rupert, "Here's the thing. If you win, you get to pick the lineup for every game till the end of the season. But if I win, you promise not to come around anymore and cause trouble." To which point, Rupert, our villain, pulls out his own custom darts and said, "I happen to have these with me." And everybody in the bar or in the pub goes, "Ooh." In which case, Ted says, "Oh, by the way, I forgot, I'm left-handed," takes a dart and hits a bullseye. So now the game is on. And it cuts to the very end of the game, and here's the very end. Our hero, Ted, needs 2 double 20s and a bullseye to win. Now, any of you dart players in the room? How hard is 2 double 20s and a bullseye? Very hard. And so Ted starts talking, and he's talking through this. And he ends up reciting this. He said, I always wondered why people doubted me. And then I saw this sign painted on the wall as I was taking my son to school. It was a quote by Walt Whitman. And the quote says, be curious, not judgmental. And I've decided that the problem is not me, but it's them. So I thought that, and by the way, then he hits his 2 double 20s in a bullseye, he wins, everybody goes nuts, and somebody buys everybody around. But it got me thinking, be curious, not judgmental. Pretty good advice, don't you think? And because I was curious, I found out that Walt Whitman never said that. But it's still good advice. And so when you come back in the conversation, as you're talking to people at your table, I'd like for you to be curious. Ask questions. Why do you think that? What would happen if? How might that work? Because what we're really interested in you telling us are the answers to these questions. First off, has Old Town achieved its goal or not? It was designed to do something. I'll leave this up on the screen. It was designed the way it was designed through a lot of effort. Has it achieved the effort that it was designed to do? Now that could be something different than what you want in the future, but has it done what it was designed to do? And why or why not? The second question is, what is your vision for Old Town in 10 years? What I've learned over the years is most of the things that frustrate us in communities were somebody's good idea to solve what was then perceived as an important problem 15 years ago. Think about that for a second. Decisions that were made that you love today were probably somebody's good idea 15 years ago or longer. Decisions that you don't love today because they seem like they haven't aged well, that was somebody's good idea 15 years ago to solve an important problem. So that perspective is really important to bring to it. So when you think about 10 years down the road, what would you like your vision, what would you like Old Town to be? How does it look? How does it feel? What types of businesses are there? What other types of development are there? The more specific the picture you take, the better. And the third question and the fourth one go together. To achieve your vision, what are the things that have to go absolutely right? What do we have to get right? And more important, what can't go wrong? By the way, I say that what can't go wrong in full recognition that the legislature's in session right now. Has the legislature made good decisions in the past? Yes. Have they made some decisions in the past that make it more difficult for us to do what we need to do? Absolutely. And so to be as thorough as we can, we need to be thinking about what are the things that we have to get right as far as businesses that we type to attract or facades and look and feel, and what things can't go wrong to get there. So I'm going to give you about 30 minutes when you come back to answer those questions. When you come back, there will be flip chart pads with markers on your tables. Everyone, I'll tell you what, let's do. Every group's got to have somebody to be sort of the leader, so we'll do a little leadership selection real quick. Can't be council, can't be the leader, you're excluded. But I'm going to count to 3, and when I count to 3, I would like for you all to simultaneously point to the person at your table that you want to be the leader. Ready? 1, 2, 3, point. All right, now good, but before you go on, here's a question. If you were a leader, please raise your hand. If you were selected leader, please raise your hand. Who was the leaders? Here, here, here. Here's here. All right, now, it's good to be leader because one of the most important leadership skills you'll ever learn is delegation. So if you were selected leader, you can either keep that yourself or you can delegate it to somebody who's just sort of ticked you off tonight. It's up to you. But come back in 10. We'll have flip charts there. We want to hear your answers to these. We'll see you in 10. Take a break. All right, you should be at your tables by now and starting to have conversations. So, All right, you've been going about 15 minutes. You've been going about 15 minutes. How are you doing? Everybody doing okay? You got about 8 to 10, but we're going to open it up. It'll be fine. So you're good, yeah. Yeah, you'll be fine. Which place is that? Yep.
You go over there, and it's like, why is Coppell having homecoming activities before homecoming there and not in our own neighborhood? You know? That's like a sad
1 minute. 1 minute. It's all right, it'll work out. Don't worry. It'll work out. All right, time. If I can have your attention, please. You've been speaking with each other. Now we want to get this out a little bit. Some of you have said to me, we're not through all the questions yet. I understand. We'll get there, okay, at this point. But to keep it moving, I want to start hearing from people. And let's see, does anyone want to go first? I'm seeing hands back here go first. So, all right, a couple of things going to happen. First off, I do want you to talk a little bit about what you spoke about at a table. I am going to hold the microphone for you rather than give it. Otherwise, that keeps me from having to wrestle you to get it back. Okay, so that's sort of my protection as much as anything else. So let's talk about that. Try to be respectful, okay? Try to be respectful. And ideally, no, don't boo, don't clap. I mean, I realize I started telling you not to cheer at a Cowboy game, which is ultimately a lot easier than you might think. But let's try to listen and understand. So let's go to this group, and you are?
Sorry, my name is Brett Castle. I live over here in Old Town, so have a very vested interest in this conversation. I'll go through what we wrote down. I have plenty of other thoughts, so I'll try not to ramble on. Ultimately, do not think that we've achieved the original vision of Old Town, especially building a home there. We saw the vision for what that area was supposed to be. Obviously, it's evolved over time, but I think that over time we've actually gotten further away from the original vision, which called for 7 restaurants. We heard that it's meant for pedestrians. There's never any pedestrians down there. We've heard that it's meant for gatherings. There's virtually never any gatherings down there. So those are just ways to show that we're just further away from the original intent. Ultimately, our belief is that there has to be more of everything. There has to be more pedestrians. There has to be more gatherings. There has to be more investment by the city to make it a success. I think that that's one of the biggest things that's missing. We have to get closer to that idea of critical mass. There has to be more offerings to drive people down there, to have more people. And we need that to support the farmers market. That's a huge success. That has national recognition, right? So that's a huge draw. We have to have all that stuff to support the Arts Center, which all of our tax dollars have gone towards. And we need more of everything to support the existing retail spaces down there. The idea that if you build more things, more people will come. That's just a general philosophy that I think is important to embrace. We've heard that we've spent all this money, $45 million, in developing the area. So we're already pot committed, right? We cannot now just not go all in. We've got to move all in on the space and incentivize businesses, people, restaurants, retail to be there so that everyone else can prop each other up. At one of our HOA meetings the one year, the woman that owned Frost, and I don't know if she's here, she was emotional because she felt like as a business owner in that area, the city didn't do what we're discussing here, have more to prop up her business, right? So I think that that's a great example of what we can do differently to not fail a business like hers. We need to incentivize businesses through grants and tax incentives Three Nations Brewing in Carrollton is a prime example. I spoke to the city over there. That has been nothing but a success. It has been a boom for all of those businesses in that downtown. We had this idea, bring Taste of Coppell back to Old Town. Fundamentally, I think the alcohol laws need to change to incentivize different types of businesses to be there. I think Coppell is antiquated in that sense. If you look at all of our surrounding suburbs, they are able to attract different businesses, restaurants in particular, because they don't have the impediment that we do with our existing laws. There's this idea of having a food truck court, which is not new, next to Twisted Root, which I think could be awesome. But ultimately, we can't do nothing. Currently, there's no new progress. Everything feels very complacent. And we must use these meetings as real tools for positive change to get back to the original vision.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Nice job. All right. Let me ask, how many of your tables had a similar vision to what you just heard? Okay. Is there any of them that didn't? No? None? You were different? Who said that? Good. So let's talk about it. Just to create, remember, curious, not judgmental. So talk to us about your.
Yeah.
I'll hold it.
Okay. Yeah. It was very. It was a good discussion. I'm not sure that we're in a full agreement that it was that different. My name is Jay Brenner. I live in Old Town. My primary interest from a personal standpoint is to keep Old Town strong as a place to live, keep our property values strong, keep the community strong. I think we agree in the sense that we want it to be vibrant and a great place to live and gather. I think that I don't know that I would go all in on just bringing people for the sake of bringing people, but for the sake of creating more community, more of a gathering space too. And we talked a lot about, having that blend of live, social, and work as a commune. And so balancing that, we did want to see more entertainment, more shops, more restaurants, more music. On a personal standpoint, I'd like to see a potential expansion. I don't know how realistic this is of the historic district. The property bordering on Burns Street, to me, is an eyesore and an issue for Old Town. We talked about making sure that we had residential buy-in. So again, that was similar. Resident buy-in, excuse me. We talked a lot about signage and bringing people to Old Town to create an awareness of what's there, and that would be obviously attractive to retailers. We talked about the right kind, and this is maybe where we differed. We want to be selective about what retail and what businesses we bring in, not just business for the sake of business, but to make sure that it fits the aesthetic of Old Town, fits the desires of the community, and so to be intentional about growing, but certainly to grow and to create more cohesion. And again, just keeping the POA in Old Town strong. We talked about the potential interference of the legislature relative to taxes, and just making sure that obviously that would be an impediment to the city controlling our future. And we talked about some signage relative to the city ordinances around signage, and making sure that the businesses that come in can have the signage that they want.
Great. Thank you. Nice job. Great. You can applaud for that if you want. That's okay. Yeah, you guys want to speak.
Okay. No one wanted to speak at our table because Sarah and I think that we've been heard way too much and people are bored with us. But anyway, the design, this is by our group, the design has not been achieved. The intent was to keep the old We feel like it hadn't been achieved because it was developer-driven. There weren't as many homes that was originally planned because it was under the runway. Talked to Mike about that just last week. And we would have never built homes there in the late 90s and early 2000s. But as builders came in and wanted homes in Old Coppell, the city approved them. I mean, because that was the only business, I guess, coming to Old Coppell were homes. So it was driven by then. So we said Old Coppell has been developer driven. It hadn't been driven by the city in many, many years. And of course, the developer said this would lead to more consumer businesses, retail, and that just never happened. But, you know, the city has to take some responsibility. City approved all of this. So the vision is just like what a lot of people have said. We are definitely more on our table talked about keeping the old, honoring our heritage, a reflection of the heritage of Coppell, save the buildings, retain green spaces, retail boutiques, rental space for businesses and locally owned businesses, to have both. We have both kind of sitting at our table here. Nightlife signage, we mentioned signage, restaurants with outdoor seating, food trucks, and a dog park. But all of it came down to a sense of community. Oak Town should be a sense of our community, and that's what I think why people live there, have their businesses there. What must go right? Respect the heritage, keep and repurpose old buildings. It must be driven by the vision of the community. We have got to stop being driven by developers and just getting money into the city. The city has to keep their responsibility to their citizens, and the city must be purposeful in their decisions.
Good. Thank you. Nice job. Nice job. All right. When somebody stands up, I sort of wander back and say, all right, let's chat for a few moments. Are you going to be the spokesperson? George. All right, George. I'll hold it. You got your standing.
Jack and I are a team, and we're hosting candidates breakfast here on April 24th, that Monday at 8 o'clock, and everybody's invited.
All right.
Okay.
Good. Thanks.
We put politics ahead of business.
I understand.
Okay.
That's never been done in this country before.
No. Okay. Well, I live over on East Beltline Road, and I used the senior center here a lot. And Tuesday I went over to the Old Town just to see what it was really like in preparation for this meeting tonight. And I was shocked, to tell you the truth. The only part of Old Town that's old is on Bethel Road. Nothing else is old, unless you consider the root beer place. It sort of looks old. It has that look that would fit in, I think, in an old town. But nothing else there does. All the homes are new. The only old home is in the Heritage Village, and that's locked. Minyards is locked, except on special occasions when it's open. The women's clothing store is doing really well. It's moving into a larger place on the first floor at 755 West Main Street, which was referred to in the original presentation. And right next to it, there's a big slab, which is going to be the foundation for a combination of luxury apartments and retail. It would be nice to have, since the women's store is doing so well, granted men don't shop very much, but still. I used to shop when I lived in West Hartford. We had several very nice men's stores. But the only thing that I can think that's old here is what's on Bethel Road, from starting with a local diner, which isn't really old but has the old look and could have jukeboxes. But you go along there, and then you come to Heritage Park, which is only 2 buildings so far, and then cross Main Street, and there's the old church and the annex next to it. And then beyond that are some more modern shops and offices, a lot of which were locked. They were closed. I think we definitely have to have those old buildings, the church and the annex next to it, kept there and restored in some way in order to retain any semblance of Old Town. And Old Town really, in my opinion, is just Bethel Road. So that reminds me of Old Main Street in Grapevine, which is wonderful Old Town. It's just one street. The gentleman mentioned restaurants and the desire for restaurants here. Well, when I first came here in 2014, there was a wonderful steak restaurant that Don reminds me, I think was called Sizzlers. And it had delicious food. Simmers, oh, okay, Simmers. Delicious food, white tablecloths, waitresses, served liquor, etc. For some reason, it closed. And then a Cajun restaurant moved in. And I'm from New England, not Louisiana, so I never went there. But it didn't last very long. And now it's Tangerines, I believe, which is a beauty salon. I understand it's doing very well. We have many other beauty salons in, like nail places, in Coppell on every corner. And I think we need a men's shop might be good. or another steak
What do you think? You
type
like this?
restaurant.
You like this
Yeah,
place?
yeah,
Okay,
like
good.
suits, sport clothes, etc. So I don't know why it closed, but when I came here on Tuesday, tell you the truth, the whole center was dead. Old Town was dead. It was not Old Town, it was Dead Town. Nobody was on the streets or anything. Stores were locked. When I went into businesses to find out, for instance, what was going on at 755 Main Street and the new construction next door to it, a woman came out. The people who were at buildings which were open were very friendly, but they weren't busy. But the only activity were children playing in the park next to the farmer's market. That was it. There wasn't practically another person on the street.
So I'm going to try to summarize what you talked about. One, I'm hearing you say we need more activity down there,
Oh, definitely.
more people, and more things to draw people into a pedestrian opportunity. Yeah. And also looking at this, you had some great questions. How's the city going to support this financially? Great question. What's the county and state historical societies? That's a great question. Yeah, Christmas decorations, seasonal decorations. And the great question is, can this vision, council, this would be a good one for you, can we do this within our existing tax structure? Can we support it financially within the existing tax structure? Great questions for council to consider. So, great job. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we got one over here. I'm close. We'll go over here.
All right, hello, I'm Denise Saberderis. I live at 736 South Coppell Road, so in one of the patio homes. Answering the question, has Old Town vision been achieved? There was mixed messages. Some said no, and the others said, what was the vision? What are the measurements to determine if that was actually achieved? What is our roadmap? What is the progression of that roadmap so that we can actually measure it? And let's put a clear vision in place with a market plan. So the group was really around, we want to see a build out. It's been sitting idle like others have said, and we want progression. We want it to be a walkable area. We want to bring people to the area, control the 18-wheeler. I'm sorry, I have to speak on this one. Control the 18-wheeler traffic. I know I fought to get the no truck signs when I moved in, and we did get them, but there's really no controls in place around that. And so I think more infrastructure can be placed there. We thought smaller businesses, destination businesses. I think that's why, a lot of the destinations bringing in traffic today are new buildings, and that's okay. We also have I think in Coppell as a whole, it's hard to bring in the staff to work some of these larger businesses, and so maybe we control it with smaller destinations. We also said, I heard others say, we said reconsider the food alcohol regulations that are currently in place so that we can have wine bars, breweries, etc. And try to bring businesses to the area that, that will be achieved and that don't, I already said this, but that don't have a lot of labor force.
Great. Nice job. Hey, thank you. Nice job. So I'm starting to hear, just a quick show of hands to help me. I'm starting to hear several of you talk about we need to rethink the alcohol regulations. Just out of curiosity, how many of you, okay, most of the hands are going up. Good. So that sort of gives us counsel. All the winos are here tonight. No, I'm kidding. No, but that's great feedback. So thank you. I mean, all I know is somebody said wine bar. This group over here said we need a wine walk, and everybody just lit up over here for that. Is that your fault, Candy?
Samit Patel. I live 10-minute walk from Old Town. Come here quite often. A lot of what we bullet itemed was a lot of what we said. One of the things in terms of has it achieved some feedback is where's the rest of Old Town? It seems incomplete, and some folks have said about finishing it. Yes, there's been a lot of work done over a long period of time, but it just needs to continue. And the Arts Center, I think, really helped bring some new energy and revitalize it. And then a lot of the individual businesses have made their own efforts to bring people to come here. They're coming because of their social media and then discovering Old Town. We talked about more eats, more cafe, wine bar, more variety, just for an evening atmosphere. They show that time distribution. Why does nobody come here after work? We've got so many businesses here. Happy hour. Sorry. But yeah, the wine bar and things like that. And you know, it's almost a European feel to this thing. Is you can walk around, you can come to it. There's shops. There's a feel to this, to be able to support the residents and that, and specialty boutiques, destination retail, pottery, glass blowing, maker spaces, things that again people will come either on the weekend or go on. And we were the wine walk people. Sorry, guys. I wanted to highlight the what has to go right and what has to go right and what can't go wrong. We wrote twice. Coppell has to go there. They show the map of the service area for who comes to Old Town or what can come to Old Town, but the rest of Coppell has to support everything in Coppell, and that's a big time miss. We have, even at Sandy Lake and Denton Tap, we have a lot of businesses that didn't survive the pandemic and stuff like that because we're not supporting things that are here. And in order for anything to work in Old Town, we got to go there. People like the ones that are there, but nothing's going to come if we just don't go there. I think that's the biggest point, and it fits both. What has to go right, that has to go right, and that can't go wrong.
Good. Nice job. Thank you. Great job. So let me ask a question. Anyone familiar with the city of Pleasanton, California? Okay, so Pleasanton is sort of out in the East Bay area, south of San Francisco. It's a great little town, very old downtown feel. The newest building downtown is a hotel that looks like it was built right in time with everybody else. The hotel was built by John Madden and his son, and used to be able to go in there, and Coach Madden would be in there having a drink. It was really nice. Great gentleman. But one of the things they did during the pandemic is on Friday and Saturday nights, they closed down the entire downtown traffic to it, and all the restaurants moved to the street. Now, they did it for social distancing. Interestingly enough, after California lifted those bans, citizens said, can we still do that? So I just want to test your thinking here for a second. If somebody were to propose, not that, I'm not putting this on council on your agenda, but if something were to pose something like that, how many of you would view that sort of favorably? Okay, how many of you would think it was a nuisance? because you know somebody's going to complain. You mean I can't drive down here? All right, so that sort of helps. Now, when you think, I've heard several of you talk about it's a destination. So the question that first comes to my mind is for whom to do what? And I'll give you the perspective. I grew up in Greenville, Texas. Some of you know where Greenville is. Anyone from Greenville? I'd have to talk slower if there were. When I used to drive down I-30 into Greenville, Texas, I used to see this sign that said Destination Greenville. And my first thought was, really? Because when I lived there, the whole point was to get out of there. And yet destination, so the question comes back is for whom to do what? By the way, it turns out Greenville, Texas at the time was a destination. It had the only Walmart in the county. And every Saturday, the place was packed. So I think the question that I'm curious is for whom to do what? First question is for whom? Do you see this more? How many of you see this more as for Coppell? I'm going to force you along this. One choice is more Coppell residents. The other choice is more regional. Okay, I realize that ideally there's a blend. Well, interestingly enough, it probably does if you want to be more regional, because it affects the types of things that could come in here and the size and scope of them. So I'm just sort of, ideally we want both. You're exactly right. But I'm trying to get a sense. How many of you see this as more of a local, it's for the citizens of Coppell to support it? How many of you see it that way? Okay, more that way, okay. How many of you see it more as a regional destination, more like, I don't know, legacy? Yeah, like a legacy. Not looking like legacy, but yeah, more like a legacy. Or a downtown McKinney. Yeah, okay, good. All right, so that's sort of, so that's one of the things that, council, you're going to have to think through. Now, the other question is to do what? And one of the things I'm hearing is retail, restaurants, gathering spaces, events, and keep the, okay, so the word that you used there I want to come back to, some of the old character. There's old character and there's old buildings. So, and let me give you an example. If you've been to Santa Fe, New Mexico, you will look, the McDonald's at Santa Fe, New Mexico looks like it was built in the early 1900s. I promise you, McDonald's in Santa Fe wasn't built in the early 1900s. So there, so let me, I've heard some people say old feel. I've heard other people say old buildings. I'm trying to get a sense from sort of everybody. How many of you say, I'm interested more, again, we want both, but I'm trying to figure out which way you're leaning, more in the old look than the old buildings? Okay? How many of you say, I'm interested more in old buildings is really a priority for me? Even more than old look. All right, so it's, I just did a quick math. I think it was 27 to 26 with 2 abstaining. Well, I think the question is either or is right, but as you look at, once you go into, and those who are in the construction world understand this, once we start repurposing buildings, sometimes it's really hard to do. It's incredibly difficult to do. So, I think that there's a balance there that what I'm trying to give council an idea of sort of where everybody is feeling. Is there any other area, any other table that didn't get to speak that wanted to? Yes, ma'am.
So I think a lot of ours, we had the same feelings about that a lot of the other tables did. A couple of the reasons maybe why it didn't, no, we don't think it achieved what it was supposed to. Maybe some of the reasons why it didn't is because of the fact that from the get-go, It was for retail restaurants and so on, and so many developers did come in, and there was so much residential put in that there just wasn't space for the other, as well as a good point that a lot of these communities that have success with those, they're built around like a town square, so like a, with the city hall in the middle with all the buildings around. So that could have been one of the reasons why this, didn't work as well. There are some concerns. So as far as the alcohol, yes, everybody's thinking that that should be allowed so that, for restaurants and so on and so forth. Pedestrians are, it's a concern for pedestrians because of the big 18-wheelers going down there and just safety, I think, on those like Bethel Road. Maybe some of the reasons that we definitely want more retail spaces and restaurants, but it's just where are they going to go? Most common people can't afford a $1.1 million structure to put those in, and so you need those smaller structures. There are a handful of those left, just a handful. There's a number that one family owns that they're just all sitting there vacant, which would be prime real estate for those little small retail businesses and restaurants. And as far as what the city needs to do in order for it to go right is to listen to the citizens, hear the citizens, what we're requesting. And what can't go wrong, what can't go wrong is if the city forges ahead and with developments that the greater population, it doesn't align with what the greater population wants. So.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice job. So let me stop. A couple of you had signed up that you wanted to say something. You wanted to speak about this, and I do want to make sure that you have your opportunity to do that. And I'm trying to think who you were one, sir. All right. So let's.
I really appreciate that because a lot of what's been discussed so far.
Who you are?
First of all, I'm Bill Sheeran. Lived in Coppell about 25 years or so. I live across the street in Old Coppell Estates. I just moved there about a year ago because I am from Coppell. I knew what Old Town Coppell, what the plan was. I put in input back in early 2002, that whole process. I have not had a chance to go to planning and zoning or to go to the city council. I've been traveling and whatnot, but I did watch the videos. I looked at the kind of what's been going on here recently, and I did want to just express a few concerns, okay? First of all, I think this is a fantastic meeting, fantastic. I felt like, and in talking with some others here in Coppell and watching, again, researching it, that we've started to get the cart before the horse. This is the horse before the cart meeting. But if we're going to do planning and we're going to, number one, I think earlier it was said that the number one thing that planning and zoning does is they look at the master plan. Does it fit the master plan? Well, I'm sorry, it hasn't. I'm just going to speak straight up. It says in the master plan, character defining buildings. Save those buildings at all costs for the character defining. What is your, really, and I'm in marketing and I work with restaurants quite a bit. What is the personality of that location? Is it Old Town? Is it legacy? Legacy is a personality. Whatever that place is up on 121 Seascapes or Lane, what is it called? Okay, that's a different personality. So who do you want to be? What is it going to be? Old Town? Is it going to be quaint? And new is not quaint necessarily. And I'm not saying every building has to stay and all, but you have to have, again, that personality. The other thing is you have to have awareness. Our table we talked about was, and these guys are, they're a lot older than I am, but they've been in Coppell a long time.
Wait a minute, sir. What's your name? What's your name? Joe. Joe took offense to that. So
Joe's my younger brother, actually. No, but we're kind of made a comment that people north of Sandy Lake, they may not even know what Old Coppell is. Seriously, they get on Denton Tap, they go up to 121, they go to work, they come back, turn the lights out. How do we market it? I think you said we got to have awareness. We got to have a marketing campaign. And then I'm going to ask you, maybe Tuesday or a Saturday, why would I go to Coppell, live across the street? Why would I go? Well, I go to the farmer's market. every week or every time they're open. The last time I was there this past Saturday, the guy I usually buy vegetables from, he was sold out at 10 o'clock. That place was a zoo, right? So it's gotten that activity. So what is the draw there? Is it movie nights? Is it something else that we've got to do as a city? And then the other thing I think we've talked about as far as restaurants, Roanoke was, their area was built on an anchor. We hear the anchor restaurants a lot. Destination restaurants. Hard Eight is a destination restaurant. We don't get any benefit from it. People come in from all over the region, literally all over the country. They come into DFW, they stay at Gaylord Texan, they bus them over, they eat Texas barbecue, and they go straight back home. Okay? But that destination, again, Roanoke was built on, do y'all know, Babes. And I know it may not be Babes, but a brand like that, Papado, brand, Babe, I mean, we can think of several of them, that when you build it, it'll be like George. George is extremely successful. Like my daughters live there practically. And people, they tell me that people come from Denton, North Texas, students, people, all the way to come into George. Why? Because it's successful and it's cool. So whatever anchor we have, it needs to be successful and cool. I'll say one more thing. I'm sorry I'm rambling here. One more thing. And that is that I do go to Old Town quite a bit. I have clients that come in. We'll go to the deli. We'll go to local diner. We'll go over to Twisted Root, kind of mix it around. Go to Hard Eight sometimes if they want that. And a lot of these guys are in retail or hospitality restaurants. Every single one of them go, this place is cool. This place is cool. Look at that barbershop. Look at this over here. Y'all have done a great job in mixing it all around. So they become aware of it. But that's what they say. They say this is the type of place. So who do we want to be in 10 years? Personally, I'll give you my opinion. I don't want to be Legacy. I don't want to be, I forgot again, Grandscape, thank you. I don't want to be 2 or 3 stories high. But if you want it to be successful, you got to bring an anchor in. Those type of restaurants bring people. People bring retail, not the opposite. And we have offices don't bring people. And we got a lot of offices. Now, I'm going to say one more thing really quick. Sorry about that. We have some constraints we got to think about that it cannot be overcome. Visibility can't be overcome. Sorry. Traffic cannot be overcome. You cannot sell any of this to a restaurant and say, hey, we get 20 cars a day, that'll go drive by. Those won't be overcome. They will be overcome when you find an anchor, like I said before, that says, I want to be that destination for you, and I'll come here. And then we give them incentives, abatements, for as long as it takes. But we get somebody in there. That's what it takes as far as that, and then the right kind of marketing from our city.
All right, thanks. Nice job. Thank you. You were the other guy? Well, I'm glad you didn't make me walk that far, so thank you. Your name is?
Let me hold this.
No, I'm going to hold it.
Okay.
I'll
My name's Jeff Berger. I live at 465 Travis Street in Old Town. Now, if you look at Grapevine, they got several blocks of retail. If you look at McKinney, you look at Legacy West. We don't have that in Old Town. So you're going to have to get something smaller. And the group of you wanting to keep the old buildings, that church and an annex, it's cost $800,000 to bring that up. Who's going to pay for the $800,000? I was 3 weeks ago, I think, on a Sunday, 2 weeks ago, and I was on the pavilion, I call it, on the east side on the sidewalk, and there was this woman, she's 26, 8, something like that, and we got into a conversation, and she turned around and looked at the building. She says, this place looks like a movie set. It really, and so I'm one of the ones that said, give me the feel over the old buildings, and because no one's going to rehab that church in that annex. It's just not going to happen. And you can fall in love with it and say we like the old buildings because we grew up that way. The poor owner has, well, in any event, it's the feel that counts, and Old Town has a great feel. When a house goes up for sale, it sells like that. And quickly. One sold, I think, 2022. It was on the market for 3 days. Oh, no, it was on the market for 1. They got 3 offers. And that's what we got to create, but it's going to have to be smaller ones, like the local diner that was moved from up there on Denton Tap. and you're going to have to make space. And for instance, that corner with that church, and you could put several things in there and create a style. But when we talk about McKinney and Legacy, we don't have the room for a lot. What do you call that? I don't know, density, but I know density, but that's not what I'm talking about. To attract. So you can't put up half a dozen or 10 businesses along there unless they're smaller businesses, a couple thousand square feet. And so we got to be realistic as to how much we can do. And they've purposely, put in 2-lane roads. Well, Grapevine has 2-lane roads, so that works. But I think we need to rethink what we'd like and what we really can do.
Okay, good. Nice job. Thank you. One of the things, and we're going to wrap this up. I'll come out. One of the things that I had the honor of doing some years ago is I facilitated the community visioning process for the town of Addison in the year 2020. Now this was like 25 years before that. And one of the things they talked about was Addison Circle and the DART train getting there and being there in 2020. And at that point in time, what we now know as Addison Circle was basically the conference center and the theater and a bunch of little old houses that nobody lived in. And if you look at that now, you might not like that, but it sort of fits them, doesn't it? The interesting thing is, it took 10 years before anybody ever moved a shovel on that development. It took 10 years of planning for anyone to move a shovel. So the reason I share that example is you've all been very kind to say we have what we have, so how do we go to where we want to be? And I think you've offered some great ideas of kind of what your vision for that is. Change doesn't happen overnight, does it? By the way, if you think about it, if we could all change easily and overnight, how many of us would wake up tomorrow with something decidedly different about ourselves? So I just want to offer that as a way of saying to council, you'll be exactly where you are 10 years from now without some different decisions, right? And some conscious decisions. And that goes back to council to do. Let me ask before I bring council back together, did anyone have an idea that you didn't get an opportunity to either hear or express? Okay, let's do a couple of quick ones real quick.
Maybe we need an arboretum.
Maybe we need an arboretum, all right? Great idea, okay? I'm gonna go here and then here.
Okay, I don't need a microphone. I don't need a microphone. It's too much. I did work up in the city of Addison as well, years ago. But one thing that I don't think I heard when I went to the city council and people were presenting is any type of numbers that supported the economic impact of a particular development. And so when I was at Coopers and Library, and whenever we looked to build something up in Addison, et cetera, there had to be a monetary driver, not just the cost of it, but what was the actual plan to produce profit or property taxes or something, so that you could compare that to the next one. And I don't see that perhaps the evaluation is being based on economics or numbers or drivers, and maybe that would help us compare what is the right thing to put in there, or the next building to build anywhere. What type of statistics or key performance indicators or anything are the city of Coppell going to put up, so that as we make decisions going forward, we use the same standards, not just what's written in this big plan.
Okay, great. And by the way, you heard that from our friends at the Retail Coach. I promise you, if we're not using metrics, everybody else is. We live in a world, data is the new oil, folks. That's how everything really now has become data-driven. So that's a great point. And you had a...
I just had one quick comment. I've lived in Coppell since, well, 99, and I go to the local diner, I go to Sarah's Place. I don't come down here. I feel like it's a neighborhood, but it's not my neighborhood. And to the person who talked about the people north of Sandy Lake, hello? It's a neighborhood. There's so much residential. It's really just a neighborhood, not mine.
Okay, great perspective. Thank you. Anyone else? Something? All right. First off, thank you all. I had no idea when the mayor and Mike asked if I would come help with this tonight. I had no idea how many would show up, and I have to tell you, this is impressive. So thank you all for being here. The other thing is, it's very important that everyone here feels like you were heard. Did we achieve that goal? Good. So thank you for doing that. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you. And we're going to do a work session, right? We're going to do a quick work session or not?
Yeah, I got a couple of legal things to do here. The time is 8:23, and we are recessing from the regular meeting of the City Council. We're going to convene into a work session. I'd like the City Council members to come join me. I should have introduced these guys when we got started, but I didn't. Councilmember Cliff Long. Cliff, raise your hand. Place one. Cliff. Never mind, that's him sitting there talking. Councilmember Place 2 is not with us tonight. That's Brianna Hinojosa. Councilmember Place 3 is Don Carroll. Councilmember Place 4 is Kevin Nevels. Place 5, Councilmember John June. Place 6, Mayor Pro Tem Bijou Matthew. And Place 7 is Councilmember Mark Hill. So we're going to continue this as a council work session, and this is a conversation that is going to allow us to talk about what we've heard tonight, and Randy's going to continue to facilitate that conversation. So Randy?
I think it's what you've heard is perspective, and so to help this, I'm going to I posed 3 questions for you all. First, the question is, what did you hear as the desired future of Old Town from a discussion standpoint? What would you like to happen next as a council around this? And are there any action items that you need as a result of tonight's discussion? So those are really the 3 big questions. I'll let you go where you want to go. But, I'm curious, what did you hear? What's the desired future? Jump in.
Randy, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for facilitating tonight. What I heard at my table was, I think, a desire for some common sense thought on a couple of things. Just the walkability, some of the alcohol laws I thought were very interesting that was brought up. And I was actually surprised to see that was so positively, passionate. That's probably a great way to say it. People are very passionate about that. So what I heard is kind of what we've talked about, the model of being able to go out, have a beverage, socialize, let your kids go play on a playground, have that kind of atmosphere and socialization. And I definitely think it's something that this council needs to look at and see, what does that version look like for Coppell, and and by doing that, will that change how other businesses look at Coppell, specifically Old Town, and will that bring that that desirability that the businesses or restaurants are looking for? So I heard a lot of that from my table, but overall, I want to reinforce the whole idea of critical mass as well. Just there being more choices, more variety to drive business down. And so I think it's definitely important, though, to make sure that our citizens know that we are trying a couple things. We have our Discover Coppell advertising campaign that is focusing on, the aspects, but I do think about the critical mass. Is there even enough in Coppell to advertise to, that region? And so, while I think it's a good start, I think we need to make sure that if that is the desire to get a little bit more of that regional reach, that we have enough to offer people to bring them to town. And with that, I yield.
Good. Anyone else? What'd you hear?
So one of the things that I heard from the retail coach that concerned me the most was that heat diagram of where the businesses or where the patrons are coming from. And I think we need to explore Councilmember Hill's idea that perhaps the Arts Center and the Discover Coppell may be venues to change that heat map. That seems to be a problem. It's not a problem. It's a limitation on what we can do down there. And it may be very true that we need to branch out a bit. What I heard at our table was very similar to what everybody else was saying. The gathering was a big thing. That was a big deal. I was also very impressed by the passion that the residents that live in Old Town have for their neighborhoods. That was very clear to me as well. Restaurants and retail was clearly part of the discussion, and as Councilmember Neville said, the alcohol changes, or what was the word I used? Passion. Thank you.
We're in work session. You can call me Kevin. It's fine.
Thank you. So even the passion toward the alcohol in the Old Town, and we've struggled with that. There's some ABC Texas alcohol TABC rules, and there's city rules. It's not, we just can't say, yeah, we're going to approve it. So I think we'll take that as a go work on. But the overall passion for the area, just look at the number of people here that are here tonight, shows that this is very dear to everyone's heart, and we certainly appreciate that. I've talked enough, Randy.
Good. Who else? What'd you hear? Go ahead.
I sort of would agree with what both of you said. I talked to somebody down in Old Town that lives down there, and they made a reference. We want it to be vibrant. We want it to be a vibrant area and everything. And when I think about Coppell is a wonderful, wonderful place to live. It is a bedroom community, and I don't know if vibrant is always the word that you would use to describe Coppell. So what this may involve is us thinking different than we have for much of the community. It sounds like what we even heard tonight. This area, quite frankly, may be different than the rest of Coppell, and it's probably been difficult over the years as this thing has continued to evolve and develop to get out of the mindset of what most of Coppell is like. Most of it is a quiet bedroom community that rolls up its streets early. And so I can see how this could be a challenge to break that mold for this particular area, or what's the right way to evolve this area. So it has just stuck with me when the guy told me we want it to be vibrant. And that's can be undefined. You're not sure exactly what that could mean, or it could mean a lot of different things, but I think it's going to mean something different than a lot of the rest of Coppell.
And there are communities out there that have those distinct pieces. It's hard to pull off, and I'm not going to ask Mike to weigh in on it, but staff will tell you that it can be a challenge to pull off, especially depending on what you mean by vibrant. And it's got to be vibrant that fits with the community. So a place where families can go, it sounds like one of the things that we heard would be we can go and hang out and we can do things. That fits. Deep Ellum might not fit.
Mm-hmm. But something in between.
Something in between
what
there.
we have now, because I do hear things like rooftop dining or nightlife. I hear nightlife, which could mean, I'm assuming we're not talking about metal concerts till 5 a.m. That's not what we're talking about, but we're probably talking about something
You're no
beyond.
fun.
There goes Kevin.
Except for Kevin. Yeah. But something beyond 8 o'clock in the evening. you know, where you have to shut down. So there's some,
Yeah,
you know,
so there- okay.
in between, that's something beyond what we have known up to this point for most of the community.
Good. Who else? Mark?
Yeah, so in listening to the discussion at our table, you know, it spoke of a real sense of place and community and maintaining the heritage of Coppell. And there was a lot of concern that the decisions have been made that were really developer driven. And I guess one of the struggles that we have as a council is property owners are in the business of making returns on their investment. But is that necessarily a return of investments for Coppell? So if say there's a great deal of office space down there, does that really achieve the goal which was set out for Old Town? So we've really got to look at both sides of the equation and arrive at a solution that's going to be, it's got to be profitable for someone to want to invest money there, but it also has to achieve our long-term goals.
Good. Anyone else? Cliff?
I like the passion for the alcohol down here. quite a lot. My doctor told me that I needed to drink a glass of wine every night, and I have been able to keep that up for about 30 years now. And so
and look at you.
Yeah,
right?
look at me. So anyway, I kind of like that one. But there was an underlying, and this is not just our table, an underlying, I guess, message or acquiescence by the group that's here tonight that they wouldn't mind the city spending a little money to do some of these things. And so I think, you know, we got a heads up on that. And so I like that idea that we could, you know, if these guys that I'm leaving behind, yeah, that's exactly right, would loosen the purse strings a little bit, maybe on some of the things, well then we all might, not only the Old Town, but we all might benefit from that. And I think the comments that the fellow made about destination, I mean, that's what the developers tried that and tried it, you know, and it's just, then we got a few folks that couldn't run what they had, and so that was unfortunate. So there was some bad luck on the front side, but I don't think we ought to give that up. I think we ought to try to get a destination, and I think one or two, whatever the business is, that would bring them down here. I think that works. I mean, because that would generate what we're talking about here in the way of activity and socializing and those kind of things. And maybe we'll get lucky. I did ask the question about, you know, George. We officed next to George for a number of years, and it was successful from day one. Now, you know, what did Christian do other than bring a bunch of his young friends? It was in his church when he came down there, and that he really had a sort of a built-in deal, and it's just taken off. And just like they said, people come from outside of Coppell for that thing. I don't quite understand it, but I don't have to, because I'm not the
You're not the target.
I'm not the target, not
That's
at
right.
all. But anyway,
Good.
That's you know,
Yeah.
I think
By the way, sort of what Cliff was saying is he wants you younger people to make sure that there's still something around when there's nobody left but Cliff Willie and Keith Richards. So,
Randy, you were staring at me a lot when you just said that. What's going on there?
yeah, you know, the shoe fits. Bijou, talk to us.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming today and participating in the discussion. It's been very helpful for all the council members, I'm sure. Cliff, my table also was very passionate about alcohol, and they came up with the wine walk concept too. You heard from Samir,
Get your
and
aerobic exercise.
Nat, and Mike and Ona was in my table. They discussed about that as well, having the nightlife and wine walk and all that. They also talked about increasing the foot traffic during happy hour. What other things will attract people to come to town, Old Town, for happy hour occasions? They want to spend more time. Of course, they talked about more retail and restaurants, that area. And I like the heat map from the restaurant consultant. I like that. It brings a lot of perspective for us. What time of the day, what time of the week, the people are coming over, and so on and so forth. That gives out more ideas about that. Of course, revising alcohol rule is also what I heard from the folks here today. So it's a good meeting, and I also heard a little bit about maintaining the heritage of Coppell in Old Town. Is also what I heard from the folks that I've been talking to outside of this group as well. So, yeah, those are the things we talked about in our group. Thank you.
Good. John?
I feel obligated to talk.
No, you're not obligated. You can go to the next question if you like.
No, I want to echo what everyone else said here. I want to thank everyone for being here. I know that taking your valuable time out here to give us input is really, it will help us in thinking and going forward with this. When I saw the heat map and the data, and I thought, we draw a lot from our city, and yet it's still not enough. Not enough to keep Old Town vibrant. And even some people mention about how north of Sandy Lake, they probably don't even really come down to Old Town because of whatever reason. Maybe it's the residential feel and so forth. So what I felt for the longest time was that, I'm sure many of you guys do the same thing when you go outside of Coppell. You want to say something about Coppell. Farmers Market is one, but you could kind of say, hey, we have Farmers Market, that's well known, and we want to draw people into that. But I think that one of the things that I've thought about for the longest time is that we need to continue on and have activities at Old Town. I know we have social events, but it's kind of sporadic, but maybe we need it more on a consistent basis. And I know we've had, Taste of Coppell before, but more so of a food truck. But I'm thinking that we could go ahead and change that around and maybe have local business owners and be able to have their food booth out there rather than a food truck, because I know those are not cheap to come by, and maybe draw in more people. And I think I've mentioned to Mayor before and said, hey, why don't we have something like Coppell's Got Talent or something that has on the weekends that would draw on not only the people that's in Coppell, but also surrounding area. Because let's face it, I mean, people will go to places that are nearby that are established businesses. But if we have something to that effect where we're having some sort of event on the weekend on a consistent basis, it probably will, the words will get out, and we'll have consistent crowd coming into Old Town and maybe make it vibrant like the way it was supposed to be. And then go on, build from there on. So that's my thought. Initially, I was kind of worried that in the Old Town, we do have residential area, residents where people might be worried about the noise and so on. But it sounds like today that they're willing to, bear with that, and even talking about alcohol serving and places for people to kind of hang out, and that's part of the other thing. So I think today we heard the people, but it's more of that they want the place to be more vibrant and find a solution to bring draw in, not just within the Coppell, but also outside of Coppell. And that's something that we'll take back to the council meeting and try to find the solutions moving forward.
Good, thank you. I want to open, anyone else have anything? Because I'm going to suggest that there's a possibility that questions 2 and 3, as you talk about those, you might really, those could almost be combined. Is what would you like to happen next? And then are there any other actions? You could talk a little bit about what do you want to go with this?
Oh.
Kevin, go ahead.
Kevin he's never shy.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to pull the trigger on a little talk in there. Mike, I do have a question for you, and I don't know, but as we talk about, next steps and discussions, so is there like with the district that we currently have, this historic district, is there a special overlay related to alcohol laws in terms of, the complaint I heard was that specifically, if you are at Twisted Root, and then there was the Quincy's concept before, and I know La Ventana's coming, so there was like crossing of boundaries with there's this back area, and there was like this invisible line of you can't take my drink from over here to over here, and that was very frustrating to a lot of people. Or maybe I'm at the Arts Center and I get a beverage there, and I want to go over to another concept. What does that look like in terms of like changing laws specifically for maybe that particular area or our ordinances versus maybe blanket wide for the city? It's a huge question, and I'm so sorry to just download that all on you. I apologize.
I'll start at the larger level. In the city of Coppell, there was an election that restricted certain alcohol sales. If the research that Bob has done, if we wanted to have the distillery or brewery or anything along those lines, he used the word distillery earlier. Yeah, that's not a problem. There would have to be an election. It would have to be generated by the citizens. The council can't call the election. They can only receive the petition, then call the election. There's a very specific language that has to be included, and they only have 30 days, citizens only have 30 days to get the required number of signatures. Off the top of my head, I don't know what that is. Until that changes, the laws that are in place are guided by the state. It's not a local ordinance issue. Everything we do is accordance to the state TABC. So there's not really anything we can change until the election changes the way we're set up.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that honest answer, and I think it's important that everyone here understands that as well. So, maybe some citizen here wants to take that upon themselves. And
yeah, the latter part of that, and I'm sorry I didn't say it this way too. There's open container laws.
Yes.
So that gets into some of the things that you were talking about.
We're not Las Vegas?
No.
No. Okay. All right. Understood. No, but honestly, because that was the concerns I heard at the table, in the spirit of wanting to have a beverage with friends, but also, socialize and let the kids play on the playground and things like that. That was a major hang up for a lot of people. So understanding a lot of those processes, I think, is important to just verbalize that. So thank you.
So could I get a clarification? When you said change the law, is that our own ordinance, or are you talking about a state law?
When I said until there is an election that changes how we do alcohol in Coppell, there's nothing that we can change.
Okay, so that's the one that has to be generated
by the citizens.
Got it.
Right.
Any other comments? What would you like to have happen next?
And Mike, you're talking specifically about the ratio of food sales to alcohol, correct?
Correct. We've had folks who have approached us that have the idea for a brewery, not a distillery, for a brewery, and or a wine bar, basically. And it's what catches them is the food requirement, and that is because of the election that was held that requires that certain percentage. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what that is right up, but it's a high percentage of food sales versus alcohol.
So it's in the hands of the citizens and the fine people.
Right. If there's some folks out there that want to put together a petition, our city secretary's office is a resource to help you in that process.
So then I've got to ask in this area, could we get Bob to give us a work session summary on this stuff? That would be very helpful for, I think, all of us so that we understand.
Sure. I've got Mindy waving at me or something. Is that, what is the food requirement? What? Okay, 51% food, 49% alcohol.
Yes. That's actually not too
More
bad.
food than alcohol. Right.
I think that's important that the citizens kind of, especially are here, understand what that rule is, and it's just, if you've got a restaurant, 51% of their sales has to be food, up to 49 can be alcohol. When that ratio goes over 50%, that's where it gets out of whack.
Or if they have no food. Or if they plan on serving no food at all.
No food whatsoever. Yes, you have to have that ratio, right?
Yes, those folks who approached us, their food portion was really small compared to what they expected
Basically
to
like
sell on
tapas,
alcohol.
but then like
Right.
wine bar otherwise,
Right.
something like that.
So prior to COVID, I remember that we had plans to have a music social at the Arts Center. There was do you remember that? So, but there was a plan to have like a Friday night kind of.
Yeah, well, the city doesn't carry the alcohol license.
I know, I understand, but there was going to be we were going to have some type of social event in the reception hall that would be kind of light music and open bar, not an open bar, but a bar. You don't remember? Okay, we'll take that one offline. That was in one of the briefings somewhere along the way. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah,
sorry, Bijou.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, just a follow-up. How do we verify if it's a 51% to 49? Do we send a staff out to verify every month, or they do the submit?
Wow. I'm responsible for a lot of things, but checking on 51%, I don't know. TABC, they submit their reports to the TABC. I've got to look to my people over here who do know. Apparently they turn in reports to the TABC.
Yeah, the restaurant will be required to report to Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission. And so my guess is you'll probably get a report from them. I don't know that is true, but I think that is true. You get reports from TABC? No? But that's how it has worked in other cities. Don?
So I would pull back. I mean, we're focusing on sort of this alcohol issue, and I hesitate to even say this because my guess is staff is already going to do this. But with all the feedback we got, with all the things that were written down on paper, having staff look at the things and say what's blocking us from doing some of these things, whether it's alcohol, whether it's curfews. I mean, whether it's blocking off streets. I don't know what it could be, but based on all the feedback we have received, or what are the things that are standing in our way of doing some of these? And then that's where I think council can have a discussion about what do we need to tackle or what do we not need to tackle. And I suspect y'all are already going to do that, right?
Yeah, the mayor's going to announce it, but when y'all leave tonight, make sure you leave your papers on your tables so that we can collect the papers, so we can record everything that we've got, so we can give a report and post it on the webpage so that you'll all have an opportunity to see. I was also asked about the presentations tonight. Those will be available online. Excuse me. So, yes, sir, we will.
Well, I think that would be helpful instead of just one-off everything. Is find out what are all the obstacles to any number of things.
Good plan.
I had a follow-up, and I don't know if Mindy could maybe help us out with this, but the presentation from the retail coach was, I thought was fascinating, just to really get those insights and have a real data-driven discussion about that. And I wish that he could have stuck around for some Q&A. Oh, there he is. He's right there. He's a ninja. Look at him. So I have a question for you. We were talking about like the heat maps and then the walk-by traffic and stuff like that. What is this chicken and egg type of scenario? Is it like if you build it, they will come, or is it like there's existing, a critical mass of people, if you will, and then you build it, and then to serve the people that are there? What does that look like in your experience? I know it's probably not the same, but your thoughts. Okay.
For whoever's ultimately building that space is usually tentative before it's even going. So they've got it lined up, whether it's a local business or Costco or anything in between. It's kind of have that, they've got that eye in the front. They're not doing spec space, and then now we have space that this is where to come into it. So there has to be that good proof of concept before that. And I know a lot of folks talk tonight about Bryce foot traffic. In one essence, in this situation, it comes down really to programming on what are we doing to make sure that we have a really successful Saturday farmers market. How do we duplicate that on Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursday? How do we make sure we have that momentum throughout the week? Ultimately, the best recruitment tool for new business is the successful businesses and the successful downtown. You can't have anything build that out of nowhere. You have to have proof of concept that it is piece by piece the downtown concept. Whether that be downtown Kennington in the 90s, they had a Chinese food restaurant on the corner. That was basically the rest was old big that rocking chair in the store, and it was piece by piece going through it. So it has to have that corner. At this point, how do you drive the foot traffic more so than, hey, let's throw up a bunch of space and hope it gets filled up? Does that make sense?
Absolutely it does. I mean, so I guess kind of a small follow-up to that is, based on what you've seen and the people that work, where does let's take an old, kind of vacant downtown, where do they start and how do they, is it mainly just let's start with events and get just people generated in the area, and then people start to show up, and then the retailers recognize that and they get going? In your experience, what does that kind of look like for that starting point to get going?
A lot of it is placemaking and event-driven because that is the most budget-friendly way to do it, right? You're not having to incentivize or outlay tax incentives and things like that. You can prove a concept by saying, hey, we got to get the farmer's market, what's the next best thing? How do we keep them here past 10 o'clock? 10 a.m. What are those type of components to it? It's overlay district, may or may not be in play this way, but it's what are the ones that are not costing a lot of tax dollars to make happen that we can prove that this is a vibrant area, that we do have folks that are ready to be activated, we just need to activate.
Thank you so much for sharing that insight. We appreciate it.
Any other comments? Yes, Wes?
One of the other items I'd like to see us follow up on actually had to do with the comments, and they were very clear from the retail coach about signage and being able to advertise. We as a council had adamantly opposed putting in signage in the Old Town area to keep it looking old. We actually had a proposal some time ago, a year and a half ago maybe, to put an electronic billboard down there that would rotate and stuff, and we voted it down. So I think we probably ought to have another discussion in that. I'm not saying that we're going to change our mind, but after what we heard tonight, I'd like to revisit that. John?
Yeah, when you're there, it's not the sign that you need there, it's the sign that drives people there. Obviously, Denton Tab, probably Freeport or Royal Lane, right? People that other city uses those roads to go through our city. We need to get them there to let them know what's happening in Old Town, whether there's an event or something going on, and that might just at least drive, but not within the Old Town itself.
And I just think we need to
Yeah.
revisit the discussion.
Right.
Agreed.
Good. Any other things that you think, what's next? What would you like to have happen? Mark?
I think we need to go back and retool and reevaluate the old Coppell design guidelines to ensure that they're driving the future development towards the goals that we were talking about here in this meeting, and make sure that it's indeed pointing in that direction, and that there's not things that are allowing us to stray off the course.
Good comment. Any others? So, council, is there anything that you would like? Mike, I'm afraid if we stick around too much longer, you will have to get another pad of to-do items. But at the same time, I don't want to cut the conversation off. Council, is there anything that you would like to have happen next with this discussion? Go ahead, John.
You know what Kevin talked about, if you build it, they'll come. I mean, we built it already. They haven't come. So we need to make sure they come by having something in addition to what we already have there. And really, if we do have additional things, I think it'll be natural that business want to come there, right? So it's more, for me, it's more focused on, hey, how do we get people there? And then the business will definitely come if the people do come down to Old Town. And one of the ways that we talked about, again, is having consistent maybe events down there that draws in people. Because honestly, when we had the social events, when I talked to people that was there, it wasn't just Coppell residents that was there. That they actually came from Flower Mound, Louisville, Irving, and they actually talked about they came here because of the social event. And that's, I think, one of the key that we could draw in people. And if we draw enough people there, I don't see why people, business would not want to come into that area.
Don?
One thing I might add, once again, I'm sure Mike's already thought of this, but from a budgetary standpoint, do we need to start putting, what funds do we have for incentives? Or, I mean, I know nothing has skin on it yet, but do we need to set up some kind of fund, or do we need to figure out, is there a part of the budget that needs to be allocated to it, or part of the fund balance, or just some thought around if it is going to cost something to do whatever we do, do we have the funds available? Or what are some ideas of where we might get some funds? How's that?
Big question.
I think big.
Yeah, you do. In order to have the funds, you'll need to budget the funds.
Okay.
In order to have the events, you'll need to set up some kind of system. You'll have to support financially. We do not have the capacity to add events. So if you want to program that space more, if you want to do those kind of things, you want to provide the economic incentives, the council needs to be able to say to us, what's it going to take financially to make that happen? What's it going to take from a personnel standpoint? And then we give that for you to consider, and you can either approve that in the budget or not.
I felt like you pushed that back on us.
It's where it needs to be.
Well, Mike, I mean, I know we have hot fund, right? And that's limited, I know, for certain uses. But how can we do something to tie in to promote the area with the hot fund? That's what I kind of want to look into to see if we could tap into.
Yeah, we have what we can use the funds for. It's the heads and beds. You remember that conversation that we've had. And, it's being used for marketing. It's being used for the different civic organizations, historical society, the arts groups. So the fund right now, in its current structure, is pretty tapped, right, in terms of potential commitments that we have. But there are other things that you do. You have additional resources. It's just a matter of prioritization. If this is a priority, you tell us that. We provide you that information, and you decide in the budget process if that's really what you want to do.
So if you look at the communities around you that do events and festivals and tastes and pick something, right? Some of that money can come from hotel motel money, but then that means that it can't be used. There's only a fixed pot of money, right? So, it might mean for you that you have to divert some things that you're currently using those funds for to this. Almost all those communities have some dedicated staff to at least, at a minimum, manage the contracts. There are some places that, they can outsource. A lot of people do events, a lot of companies. So some of that you can outsource, but there's at least a dedicated staff person. So back to Mike's point, at some point, you'll have to think about that priority versus another priority. But certainly it's doable. Absolutely. Bijou and then Kevin.
Yeah, I know we work well with the chamber, and we have budgeted money for spending for marketing, and we recently approved additional money. Now it's about 300,000 plus. Are you thinking about additional money and staff, Mike?
Well, the money that's going to the chamber is not doing any programming. So to answer the question straightforward, if it's staff, it's going to require additional money. As far as the marketing goes, Discover Coppell is its own program. It has, you have to kind of decouple it, I think I've said before, from just Old Town, because it's doing more than that. This is a specific area with a specific need, with a specific request, with a specific direction. So you have to, your mindset has to get around, not you personally, but your mindset has to get around, if this is a priority, then what is it, to your point about the vision and what we're trying to do, whatever that is that you're trying to do, that we would build a program around it, but we need your direction to say, that's important, we're gonna support it, and this is how we're gonna support it, right?
Kevin?
No, I think the two things that really kind of rise out for me is, and we referenced it at the very beginning of this work session, was, creating that synergy with the Art Center. And I think that, that's the city has already committed a lot to that Art Center, and then we recently just committed to staffing that Art Center even more to maximize programming and profitability as best that we can. So, to me, the actions that we need to take specifically involve, like, how can we tap into that maximization of the Art Center and then have that trickle out to the other businesses, that are immediately in that area. And the second thing that just seems to kind of rise to the top is that consistency of programming. And I understand it will take discussions and fund sources and things like that. But based on the feedback from our retail coach presentation, that if we do have that consistency of programming, I know we already do a great job of having the events out there, and definitely my family goes out there quite a bit, but I think those are kind of more those one-off events, and as good as they are, it's not building that consistency or that habit, like, hey, let's go down there because I know there's going to be something happening down at Old Town. So I definitely think that we should look at those two avenues of that synergy with the Art Center and then that consistency of programming if we want to try to build up the Old Town area more. But I actually really look forward to seeing what staff comes back with when we take all the information on these white papers and really, consolidate all that into one report and kind of see what are the things that bubble up to the top. I definitely think we can make more informed decisions when we can actually see that data presented to us all in one. So thank you.
Let me ask a question of you regarding that, because I was thinking about that earlier, then you brought it back up to hit my mind again. Is there a business plan for Old Town? So, for example, is there a business plan that says, if we did this, 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 and this, and we execute it well, just like any other business plan, that we could look at it and go, it should help drive, we can drive this type of traffic, is that that then draws the retail and the restaurant. So, is there sort of a coordinated business plan for that? And if not, there's two ways of getting there. One way is for you as council to say, this is what we want, which would be you all agreeing on what we want. Staff come back and give it to us. Another way is tell us what's possible and let us tweak that. And so I'm curious, first off, is there sort of a coordinated plan, not a vision, but just a plan to maximize it? And then the second, if not, what way works best for you to get that? I mean, do you want to, we can give people, you can hear from the retail coach and others and get direction, say, go help us do that. Or you can have something, bring something to you with a couple of options. Do you have a preference? What works best for you, for your style?
I'm gonna say more. I'll say, I've been on council almost 2 years now, right? And I think that that's been something, from what I understand, is there's never been a business plan per se that I have seen, but the roadblock to that was that we really never had a resource, a la the retail coach, that could really step up or was willing to step up or was available to step up to really help us with that. So that's why I thought the presentation tonight was so valuable, and I've been looking forward to this event because of that presentation alone. So that's my years as just or my experience just sub 2 years on council, but I love the idea of maybe if there wasn't one before, this council committing to really exploring that deeply and figuring out ultimately what is the vision for Old Town, because from what I understood based on the presentations I've been giving, there was an initial vision, and the vision has changed multiple times and gone different directions. And just something that kind of stuck out based, related to this is that the people that were at my table when we were talking felt like they were told this is kind of the original vision, and because it had adjusted so many times, they really weren't sure what the vision was, and they live here. So, I think that we owe it to the people and the businesses that are here that have invested their time and money to at least take a deep dive to it. So I think we're taking the first steps now by having this presentation and this discussion and getting this feedback, and I'm really grateful that we have the opportunity to do that.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
So I'll take that as a request to put that as an agenda item to
Yes, sir.
determine how we want to move forward.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good.
So,
Don?
Don, did you have?
I'll talk. Well, I've lost my train of thought now that you.
I should.
We'll come back to you.
I should have my words, didn't I? I know it. I
No,
got in your head.
I was gonna suggest, we're. Yeah, we're.
Well, so basically, it had to do with coming up with a vision. I can come up with a vision of what I want it to be, but the reality of making that happen, what is possible, I think that's sometimes the disconnect. Is like it goes along with what the retail coach and people who've lived down there and had businesses down there just over time. And to the point, there was a vision, but then it's morphed. And I've heard it described sometimes as developers, it dictated this and that, but it also could mean it's what the market could bear. I mean, it's like it's what was allowed to develop down there that was going to be successful, regardless of what I want down there. Because I can come up with a grand scheme and it could not work because I can't get the people down there, or Mike won't let me sell alcohol, or whatever the obstacle is, it can't happen. And so
I can see a T-shirt. Mike won't let me.
It's Mike's fault.
Well, Mike could host a happy hour down there on his own.
You got to give away the alcohol.
All right. By the way, anytime we start devolving into Mike needs to host a happy hour, it probably tells us it's time to start wrapping this thing up.
So Randy, I do have a.
Yes.
I think what we probably need to do as a council is we need to come up with a plan to come up with a vision. And then to that, we need to come up with an art of the possible.
Mm-hmm.
That would not necessarily support our vision, but tell us what is possible to that. And I think we need to come up with that vision first, and then go after the art of the possible. And it's going to be, we're not going to get it done next week, but I think that's what we need to head down the path on.
You think if I'm building a house, and many of you built houses, I built several and remodeled some too, that you start with, you go to an architect, you say, this is what I want, and they go, but your lot is only this big. And I'm sorry, you can't put a 3,000 square foot ranch on a 30 by 50 lot on one story. So so some of that, there's a combination of those two things that work. And I think that's a good place to think about it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we as a group of 8 need to come up with a vision. Maybe we want to ask a group of citizens to engage like we did in the 2040 plan. Or, we've got several options there, but that's what we need to decide on how we want to move forward. All right, anybody have anything else they need to say? Randy, did you have any closing comments?
thank you all. It's been a great night. Hope you got a lot out of it. Thank you all to all of you. And
Okay, I've got a couple of, I got to do the legal stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, please leave your papers on the table. We will take them, transcribe them, and put them on the city website. Thank you very much for all the discussion. And we do owe a huge thank you to Julian, who is sitting over here in the corner.
Always Julian.
If you look at all the cables and connectors and microphones he's got going on there, it must have taken him 2 days to hook all that stuff up.
He'll be here for 2 hours tonight.
Yeah. So thank you very much. We are going to recess from work session and rejoin our city council. There being no further business before this council, we are adjourned at 9:09 p.m.